Jamaica, paradise in the Caribbean. Montego Bay, Jamaica's second largest city, is the starting point for tourists from all over the world. Today there are still many reminders of the time when the plantation slaves were forced to work in appalling conditions, and those who tried to escape were soon recaptured. Under English colonial rule, Jamaica continued to laze under the heat of the Caribbean sun. Due to its precarious association with piracy, did not develop commercially. Not until the serious cultivation of sugar was any real progress made. The slaves who worked on the sugarcane plantations had been ruthlessly separated from their normal cultural existence and therefore sought solace in Christianity. The lively city centre is a mixture of both old and new. Modern concrete houses are situated next to simple wooden huts. Congested streets with numerous small shops and street traders. But only a few historic buildings remain from the founding years of the 18th century. With a decline in sugar prices, the economy took a downward spiral. Not until the beginning of the 20th century did the cultivation and export of bananas bring a temporary upturn to the island's economy. Rose Hall Great House. In Jamaica, the British colonial country seats are called Great House, which means mansion. Between 1770 and 1780, John Palmer had this imposing construction built on a hill. At the end of the 1960s, it was renovated at great expense. His cruel wife Annie, also known as the White Witch, murdered her husband as well as several slaves. Since then, rumour has it that her ghostly form is frequently seen wandering the house. Near Falmouth, a small river flows into the sea. Here there's a special feature, Martha Brae River Rafting. The leisurely jungle adventure on the calm river can begin. At the front of the narrow, swaying craft stands the raft captain, who skillfully steers the raft with a long bamboo rod. A tranquil river landscape passes by. Seductively, the dense tropical rainforest shows off all its spectacular colours. And it's an excellent way to explore this tropical paradise. After about 5 kilometres, we reach the end of the journey. This romantic experience has reached its conclusion and will certainly remain in the memory for many years to come. Here on the north coast, Christopher Columbus landed in 1502 during his 4th journey to the New World. Close by, the Spanish were defeated by the British in a bloody battle for sovereign control of Jamaica. After a short while, we reached the Green Grotto Cave, a system of stalactite caverns. Many years ago, the last survivors of the Arawak Indians, of whom there were originally more than 100,000, returned here. More than 10 kilometres of pathways lie 40 metres below the Earth's surface. Christopher Columbus loved this island. It is the most beautiful that my eyes have ever seen. Dunn's River Falls is the name of a waterfall near to Ochos Rios. This main tourist attraction is one of the island's most well-known natural features. In swimming attire, more than 1 million visitors a year attempt to climb through the spraying torrents of water past linking hands in a human chain led by an experienced guide. In foaming cascades, Dunn's River plunges 200 metres down toward the sea over step-shaped limestone blocks across an overgrown landscape of ferns and plants. Into Ochos Rios Bay flow not 8, as the Spanish name leads us to believe, but 3 rivers into the sea. About 8,000 people live here in Ochi, as the place is lovingly called by the local inhabitants and holidaymakers. During a visit to the market, there's still a strong atmosphere of the past. Here, goods are offered, bargained and sold. Nothing has changed. Indeed, the sweet juice of the sugarcane is still being squeezed out by hand and is much preferred to most modern soft drinks. The inhabitants of this former fishing village are particularly proud of the turquoise-coloured Big Ben. Through metre-high ferns, the winding road ascends the hill in front of the town. The Coyaba River Garden is located here, an oasis of relaxation and tranquility. This well-tended botanical garden is open to the public. During a guided walk through the luxurious tropical vegetation, one can discover the names of plants, take in their fragrance, observe colourful fish, and generally enjoy life under the sun. In the language of the Arawak Indians, Coyaba means paradise, land of joy and eternal song. A small museum in the style of a Mexican hacienda provides a glimpse into the world of the island's original inhabitants, into the art, culture and way of life of the Arawak. Harmony Hall is the name of the immaculate manor house located on a turn-of-the-century plantation. The boundless wealth of the white masters is a thing of the past. This Victorian building is a reminder of English colonial rule. James Bond Beach is the name of the former winter retreat of the English author Ian Fleming, who created British secret agent James Bond.
Welcome to Sun Valley Plantation.
The next stop, a visit to the Sun Valley Plantation. Here, Nolly and Lorna Binns continue a tradition that dates back 250 years.
Vasco da Gama brought some seedlings from Africa in 1499 to the Caribbean and Atlantic region, and it has a protective skin here. It seals the coconut off.
Lorna explains that in 1499, Vasco da Gama introduced the African coconut palm to Jamaica. Both indigenous and imported plants flourish in the fertile soil and sun-kissed climate. The blossoms of the banana tree provide a splendid array of colour and yet again promise a good harvest. In addition to bananas, citrus fruits, papayas, melons and apples, various spices are also cultivated here. Expansive fields of coconut palms dominate the plantation. Toward Port Antonio, we visit the overgrown but very romantically located Somerset Falls. The footpath which leads to this wonderful display of nature cuts through an evergreen rainforest. Several natural pools tempt the visitor to a refreshing bathe. The Daniels River rushes toward the sea in diverse cascades through a multicoloured garden landscape. Port Antonio, a boulevard of palms greets the visitor and leads to the centre of the colourful harbour town, which has seen better times. In front of the courthouse, a small bright red clock tower decorates the square. In Harbour Street, the houses indicate the prosperity of the banana traders who exported their goods to North America in the second half of the 19th century. The Christ Church was built on a small hill near to the harbour. Here, the town's much exploited people celebrated the Sunday service. The well-tended red brick church has witnessed many events: the first Spanish invaders, attack by former slaves, and British colonial rule. From a hill above the town, there's a good view of both Double Bay and the privately owned Navy Island. We visit the former residence of Hollywood legend Errol Flynn. In 1947, he fell in love with this country and bought this small island. Under the rule of its colonial masters and slave traders until well into the 19th century, it was not until the 6th of August 1962 that this proud island gained its independence. almost every village has a church. Christianity is the main religion of the local population, which consists of the descendants of slaves from America, often mixed with European and Asian blood. At the roadside, goats look at us curiously. They don't appear to be able to understand why we're so fascinated by the undulating, evergreen tropical landscape, which they take for granted. The Blue Mountains, breathtaking primeval nature with a hint of adventure. Wild fissured mountains whose highest peak reaches more than 2,000 metres. The black gold of the Blue Mountains enjoys a legendary reputation among gourmets. It's mainly exported to Japan as the price it demands in Europe and North America is too high. Cool mountain mists, just enough rainfall and volcanic soil unite to create the exceptional aroma of this world-famous coffee. Coffee has been cultivated on this Caribbean island for 280 years, and those who've read the 007 novels by Ian Fleming are familiar with the fact that even James Bond drinks Blue Mountain coffee. When slavery was abolished, many of the newly freed slaves left the sugarcane plantations and started to grow coffee in the mountains. On the way down into the valley, we visit Sangster's Old Jamaica, one of the country's oldest established rum factories. Rum, the sugar water of the Caribbean, has a tradition which is closely linked to the cultivation of sugarcane. Port Royal is situated on a small strip of land at the entrance to the natural harbour basin of Kingston. At the farmost point, the mighty Fort Charles was constructed here because of its strategic position. It's one of the most beautiful and best-kept fortifications on the island. The great earthquake of 1907 almost completely destroyed Giddy House. In front of the small house in which Admiral Horatio Nelson once resided, there's a lonely gravestone. Kingston is the capital of Jamaica. It's the island's political, economic and cultural centre. This former pirate stronghold is a lively mixture of joie de vivre and reggae music. In the centre of the town is the Ward Theatre, a theatre of some note, turquoise and generously decorated in white stucco. Opposite, the splendid Kingston Parish Church, which dates back to the late 17th century. In the centre of the hectic hustle and bustle of the capital is the marvellous Devon House, built in Gregorian style and surrounded by a green island of tranquility. An extensive park with fountain and king palms proudly surrounds this splendid town villa.
Now check out the wicked inspiration of
Bob Marley is the uncrowned king of reggae. He died in 1981 and a museum is dedicated to him. In 1534, after the Spaniards had given up their first colonial capital, Sevilla la Nueva, they founded Spanish Town, the town on the level. Lover's Leap is the name of a rocky outcrop which contains a lighthouse. Legend has it that a pair of amorous slaves jumped from the cliff top to prevent their owner from separating them. Reflectively, visitors to this rocky coastline look down the sheer drop to the memorials of a great romance which led to mutual death. Further to the west, the path leads to a hilly coastal road. Treasure Beach is the name of a remote bathing resort which contains several medium-sized hotels, the ideal retreat for those who wish to enjoy water, landscape and peace. With a population of around 4,000, Black River is the regional capital of St. Elizabeth and is an important harbour town on the western side of the south coast. Elegant and noble houses indicate the town's former prosperity. At the turn of the century, this town was a busy trading centre for blue wood, from which a dye is extracted to colour pelts and leather. In the fishing harbour, the boats of the crab fishermen, who earn a modest living from these tasty crustaceans. Close by, in the small harbour at the mouth of the Black River, tourist boats are being prepared for the day's outing. The water appears to be black due to the darkness of the riverbed. Herons and other birds hide in the green of the riverside plants. But the main feature that visitors come to see is the alligator. Stretching for 70 kilometres, the Black River is Jamaica's longest river, and at one time was navigable for 40 kilometres. Great Morass and Upper Morass are extensive swamplands that drain into the Black River. The many tributaries of the river are surrounded by mangrove trees, which are firmly anchored below the water by their thick roots. But of course, the boat is returning to the harbour. Negril. This small resort on Jamaica's western tip has become one of the Caribbean's most popular holiday destinations. Fishermen still set out to sea in their tiny boats. The idyllic white beaches and numerous water sports are sure success for the holiday of a lifetime. This Caribbean paradise has everyone under its spell. Now all that's missing is the world-famous sunset, which is celebrated each day in Rick's Cafe. Jamaica is one of the world's last paradises, an island of dreams, with tropical primeval forests, fascinating mountains, exotic plants, white sandy beaches, a beaming sun, and scorching music.